Today we are joined by Michelle Dresbold. Now, Michelle is a handwriting expert, and I just had asked her if she was a graphologist or studied graphology, and she set me straight. She is not. How are you doing today, Michelle?
I'm doing great. How are you?
All right. Now, why would you not say you're a graphologist? I thought they were the same thing.
They're not exactly the same thing. Graph means writing. Ologist is study of. So anybody who studies writing is a graphologist.
Mhm.
I call myself a handwriting expert because I I actually encompass many things dealing with handwriting. For example, I can determine thread analysis, how dangerous a person is. I also can I talk about a personality of a person from their handwriting, but I also do forgery and anonymous letter detection. Um, and that's called question document examination. So since it's so broad, I just call it handwriting expert.
Okay, so is a graphologist more in line with authenticating signatures like on signed baseballs and cards and things like that?
No, that's a document examiner.
Oh,
That's a person like example, when you do that, you can go to court. A graphologist doesn't go to court. A graphologist is more personality profiling, which I do, but
hmm.
you don't go to court with that. When you go to court, you only say, oh, John Doe wrote this, or this anonymous letter was written by kidnapper B. So it's a broader spectrum.
Okay. And I've actually interviewed Mark McClish, who does statement analysis, and that sounds pretty similar in regards because I asked him too. For example, polygraphs are not allowed in court. Cannot
Right.
use them. They're not admissible. I asked him the same thing about statement analysis. Is it admissible or is it more of an investigative tool? Am I correct in assuming that this again is not necessarily admissible, is more of an investigative tool?
Okay. Personality profiling is an investigative tool.
Okay.
I've worked with tons of law enforcement. We might use that in an investigation, but you cannot go to court and say his handwriting says he's a murderer. You
Okay.
can only go to court to say he wrote this bank robbery note or he wrote the note on the girl's body.
Okay. So for
Which,
identification purposes,
for
you can
identification
go to court.
purposes, you go to court.
Oh, good. And I imagine the other you really don't want because you have a minority report situation, don't you?
What?
Minority Report. And Minority Report is a story where they projected that somebody was going to commit a crime and arrested them before committing the crime.
Oh, yeah, you can't do that.
And so, well, in theory, because you do study people, and I know that you warn this person may be potentially dangerous or not dangerous or whatever with your friends, correct?
Oh, definitely. Like, I actually think learning about handwriting, you can know if somebody potentially is dangerous, how they may act, what they might do. And it's all in their handwriting. Like if you were going to marry somebody and you showed
Mhm.
me her handwriting and I didn't like her, I tell you, no, no, no. Or you're an employer, pretend you're an employer and you need to hire somebody. I may look at that handwriting and go, oh my God, you're going to deal with a lot of problems. So you can help predict what's going to happen.
Okay, now one of the worries would be, and it was really early in your book. I mean, like right from the get go, your first job was a child who they found a note that looked like it was a kidnapping note or ransom note or something like that. And you essentially said, oh, it's not the child's not under duress, not under threat or anything else. And another expert actually had said, oh my God, call in all the forces.
Right,
Now that's two people looking at the same thing.
right.
How do we, and I know I'm coming in strong early, but how do we
Well,
determine?
well, I'm very, very good at what I do. So if I say it, believe me. It's just, it's like everything else. You might have two psychiatrists, and one goes, the guy's crazy. The other guy says, or woman says, he's faking it.
Mhm.
It really comes down to how good the person who is evaluating it is. Um, yeah. So if when I looked at that note, it said something like, "Oh, please rescue me, Kelsey." And they said, "Oh, it's dangerous. This poor kid's in trouble." I'm like, nah, no problem. It's a 4, 5, 6-year-old girl. She's okay. And when they put it on television, it was on national news, kid kidnapped. And I'm like, oh my God, I told them it's nothing. And the next day, this little 5-year-old girl came in with her father to the police department and said, "I'm so sorry. I was playing a game. I wrote this to my teddy bear and it flew out the window." So there are things in handwriting. If somebody's in danger or someone's scared, it will show up in their writing.
Interesting. Now, I'm curious, and this is probably the hardest thing of all for you to answer. So I completely understand if it's impossible to do. But I love to think about a process. Like, I want to try to experience through your eyes. You are handed a document, let's say, that has something written on it. How do you see that document? How do you absorb it? And can you describe that feeling or thought or pattern? I know it sounds odd, but I think there's some power in that.
Okay. Well, the first thing, depending on the document, I will not look at it when I'm tired. Because when I'm tired, I can't think straight. So when I'm fully ready, I just look at it and I take a pen and pencil and I just write down my first impressions without censoring myself, without going, well, maybe this, maybe I just write it down, make a list. And then I look at it again for maybe some details. And then I put it away. And then I look at it again and go, okay, this is the profile. But I don't censor myself. I look at it. I mean, handwriting, people think I'm like this psychic. And I might be, but I'm not really psychic. I psycho a little bit. I, I look at the document. I look at writing. And there's everything to me, it's obvious. And I try to explain this to people that when you write, I'm looking at something that you put from your brain onto paper. And so I'm just reading someone's brain prints. And so there's a reason, if I look at your handwriting, it doesn't look like mine. There's a reason when you look at your Aunt Sally's handwriting, you recognize it right away. And you make a choice with everything you put on that page. And I can analyze handwriting. Sometimes I'll take paper and I'll turn it around so I'm not reading what someone wrote. I'm just looking at it as if it's a painting or a visual thing. And how does it sit on the page? So
that sounds like editors who deliberately copyright backward, like start.
That makes sense.
Because then they don't get caught up in the story or logic of it. They just can see spelling and stuff like that. When you say the impressions, I'm just curious again, though. It's like when you look at it, do you get a feeling? Do you hear something? Do you see something? Like I imagine there might be a time you just get chills, like you get the wrong thing or.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I could look at some handwriting and go, "Oh my God, this is dangerous," and I would get scared or sick almost. But so my first thing is what feeling does it give? You look at handwriting, all of a sudden people say, well, what do you look at? It's that first impression. Does it look coarse and ugly? Does it look beautiful? I mean, that's your first impression when you look at it. So, I looked at a handwriting. Can I tell you a story?
Please.
I have my book, Sex, Lies, and Handwriting, and somebody called me and she said, I read your book and I never knew, I'm like 15 years older than my brother and sister. I really never knew them. I moved out. My mother remarried, had 2 more kids. And now I'm older and I went back and I love my sister. But my brother's a little odd. Can I send you his handwriting? And I'm like, sure, And she sent me the handwriting. And she and her sister, they live far away, and they called me and they said, what do you think about my brother? And I said, well, I hate to tell you this, but he's everything that would be in my book, and I just hope you're safe. He's a very, very dangerous person. And they said, well, we believe he's a serial killer. And I was like, oh, they said, what should we do? I said, well, only thing I know you shouldn't do not give him my phone number. But so as it turns out, where they were living, girls were disappearing. And I called the state police. And so there are times when I look at something and I just get this, oh my God feeling. And the one sister said her brother was like a year older than she was. And she said ever since she was a little girl, she slept with a knife under her pillow because she was so afraid of her brother.
My God.
So.
Did they catch him?
Well, he was in Alaska. And we called the police, and then he escaped out. He went to somewhere like Seattle.
Is it real keys?
I don't know if they caught him. And that was the last I was involved in that.
Oh, I would have to know. I'm wondering if it's Israel keys. Yeah.
I hope they caught him. And I don't know. And the girl stopped disappearing once he left Alaska. So.
Wow. Oof. Okay, that's
yeah.
Well, how about a cheerful one like the girl? I mean, do you have that happen quite a lot where you're like, oh no, they're faking their own thing?
Well, I have a lot of cheerful ones. I mean, sometimes somebody will show me handwriting and go, should I marry this guy? And I go, sure. He's great. Or I'll give you another example of something I think is good. I worked for a lot of companies and helping them hire people.
Mm-hmm.
And this one company said, oh, what do you think of this girl? We don't think she's smart enough. She misspelled a few things. And I said, I think she's plenty smart. I think she's going to be a great employee. I really think you should hire her. They said, are you sure? I said, especially some younger people, they don't know how to spell anymore, So I said, I think she's going to be good. They hired her. She turned out to be their number one employee. So, sometimes it's I have the evildoer stories and the really sweet stories.
Well, I imagine the evildoer stories get more press, if it bleeds, it leads. So I do like to go both ways.
Yeah, they're kind of more fun. It's nice to have a nice story once in a while, though.
Now, on that note, I am curious about something because, I will speak for myself. My handwriting is so horrible. I learned cursive, forgot cursive. I learned how to print, forgot how to print when I was taught cursive.
Okay.
Then went back to printing, forgot how to do that, came up in computers. I avoid writing like the plague and have for years. And every time I write, even on a card, it doesn't really even look like itself necessarily. And my signature's pretty much illegible. I'm curious, though, because I know I'm not alone. There are many people who are, especially in the computer world and things like that, who barely write at all.
Right.
Do they still have all these same tells, or does that make a difference because of lack of competence?
You still have the same tells. A lot of people aren't writing as much anymore. And there's a reason you choose not to write too. I mean, all of those are choices. You don't enjoy writing anymore. And a lot of people don't.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a reason there's a choice. And just because you think it looks ugly or doesn't look good, it could look really beautiful to me. Very creative people often have very kind of crazy handwriting. And sometimes people who are almost like robots and are fake, they have that real pretty, perfect handwriting. So real pretty, perfect doesn't mean good, and real messy doesn't mean bad. Most creative people have a little bit of a sort of you can't wackadoodle handwriting, and that's okay. If it's too wackadoodle, not good. But I'm going to give you a piece of advice though for your brain. Handwriting is different than working on a computer. With a computer, it only lights up one part of your brain, and you're just sort of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
When you write, you have to take your brain, your eye, and your hand, and your coordination, and you have to move. You're actually using more parts of your brain. So to keep your brain healthy in the long run of life, it's a very good thing to write. even if it's just for fun in a notebook.
Yeah, I believe that, and I know that that is a great way for memorization too, because while you're writing something, you're having to inject it in your brain in a different manner. So now you've experienced it twice.
Right.
So
And
I
even,
know that.
right. And even in school, if you're studying, some people just write their notes on a computer. Studies have found that if you actually write your notes, you remember them more. So, and for older people, to keep your brain healthy, just keep writing and write with your right hand and write with your left hand. Keeps more parts of your brain moving and going. So it is a really easy way to keep your brain healthy.
Well,
So
perfect.
start writing.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's always so nice to say, yeah, but I know myself. It's like I barely have.
We're going to give you a homework assignment. So
Oh boy. Um, you mentioned having the perfect, precise writing. That actually leads in really well. You have a quiz in your book that I kind of
I
wanted
did.
to take live, and I'll confess, I know who the first two people are because I study you a lot, but it
Okay.
leads in perfectly. There's two signatures, both named Ted, which is a perfect thing. You have the two Teds. They're both fun, delightful people that have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of corpses piled up between them. And one of them, and to me, this one's obvious, even in the signature, that you have Ted, who's A, and that's Ted Bundy, and then a Ted B, who's Theodore Kaczynski, or the Unabomber, who was
Right.
the ultimate recluse, who lived
Mm-hmm.
in a space. I've confirmed it with the investigator who broke his manifesto. His space in the wild, it was maybe a little smaller than where he lives now
Oh,
in prison. So
right.
ironically, his life is possibly better
Okay.
than it was, which is really disturbing.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
How did you know one was Ted Bundy? I told Sid one was Ted Bundy, or did I?
Mhm.
And one was Ted Kaczynski. How did you know which one was which?
Flamboyant.
Which one? Ralph Flamboyant. How else? I'm going to give you a quiz.
um, Ted Kaczynski's an engineer and incredibly precise, and I'm willing to bet that his entire manifesto was almost typewritten looking. I
Right.
also know this is a fun fact I've brought up in other ones, but I love to repeat myself. And
Okay.
um, John Fitzgerald, who helped break the manifesto, did it because Ted Kaczynski's English is perfect,
Mm-hmm.
which is very ironic. His mistake was that he is more correct than everybody else. He had a
Okay.
phrase that he liked to use. Now, you've heard the term, you can't have your cake and eat it too, right?
Yes, I've heard that.
Well, he wrote in the manifesto and in a letter to an editor, you can't eat your cake and have it.
Oh.
Now, the interesting fact about this is the original saying, if you go to etymology, I don't know if it's etymology with a quote, but if you really dig the quote out, the original quote is, you can't eat your cake and have it too. He was correct.
Yeah, he's
But,
correct.
but because he's correct and everybody else is different, that caused, a variance. So anyway, that again, that precision, everything he did was precise. His
Right.
handwriting to me looks very precise. It's very
Right.
tiny, and I know people like that who are very engineering. They're not
Right.
crazy, they're just engineering. uh,
Engineering. Yeah.
and he actually may not have always been crazy. I know he had a bad childhood and problems, but he was also an MK Ultra tested on, so we never know. Now,
Right.
Ted Bundy,
Mm-hmm.
just looking at it, you have a contemptuous flair.
Okay.
I I don't know. I could be wrong in how I'm looking at it, but it feels, because I don't have any sense on it. It feels extremely flamboyant and bold and up yours, and I can do whatever the hell I want to do, that type of
I
thing.
mean, you're right. I mean, that's why I say about handwriting. You never studied it, but you
Mhm.
know that instinctively, and you know that somebody who's writing big. Hi, how are you? Here, look at me, look at
Mhm.
me. Ted Bundy liked to be around people. Hi, Ted Kaczynski, teeny weeny weeny weeny. Don't look at me, don't look at me.
Mhm.
So the size alone, I mean, you know that. Like nobody has to teach you. Oh yeah, the big one is the more social, outgoing handwriting. But you were right. You're an excellent student.
Oh, well, thank you. Now, one thing though, I worry about though is how we came upon the art. Like you talked about that psychologists, put together samples of all their patients and then studied it. Was this a case of reverse engineering, as in I know who this person is? Like, I know who Ted Bundy is. I know what he did. I knew his flamboyant. I know all that. So then I look at two pieces of handwriting, and I know engineers, and I know a lot about Kaczynski because I've interviewed. So now I can ascribe my knowledge of them to the samples versus you're deconstructing. Like, if you just hand me a note and somebody writes it and it looks like Ted's right, I don't know that. I don't know that this is a flamboyant serial killer.
You did, though. You did. I mean, if I hadn't, you still instinctually knew that first Ted was flamboyant and big. So if I just handed it to you, I'd say, is this an engineer recluse? And you'd say, it doesn't look like it to me.
Okay, well, you give me an A and B, yes, but but you hand me something. It's hard for me to come from a concept zero, and that's where I just want to be clear. And I do worry about that whole aspect of, if you know who they are, it's easy to use confirmation bias. I guess would be what I fear myself doing is like, okay, I know Ted Bundy's all these things, and I see these two handwritings, and then this one's here, and boy, that matches what I think about him, and oh, it happens to be his. So see how smart I am? Well, maybe.
You are smart.
Oh,
well, no, well, actually, how the study of handwriting came about, you'd had a group, in the 1800s, a group of psychiatrists who put different kinds of handwriting and different personalities together, and they kept compiling it. Even now, handwriting is always changing because the style you learn is different. Like, kids are learning a different style now than they did 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50. So you have to always be sort of updating. And what I often do when I see handwriting and I don't know, it's confusing, I will talk to that person. I'll say, tell me about yourself. I'm always learning. I am always learning.
Okay. And I know you use body language and things like that to help supplement it. And we're going to be talking about that later because you're part of a new crew.
Right. That's true.
Okay, so we'll jump forward, and it's going to get harder for me because I don't know who they are per se. Like I said, the first one is almost a cheat.
Okay.
Okay, the second one is, here are handwriting samples of two famous artists. One is feeling upbeat while the other is feeling down and in the dumps. Which artist is feeling down, A or B? This one, again, I think you're doing the easy version for us. It's obviously A, who is feeling down.
Okay.
And because one, you've got a drifting downward, and I know you've talked about that too, but even more, I mean, the second one even has a sun, for God's sake. It's like, right. you're not gonna get a whole lot there.
Right. Well, you're right. The first one is heavy and goes down. Mm-hmm. What do you feel like when you're downbeat? You feel heavy and down. What do you feel when you're happy? High. You're happy and up. So who's the first one? Am I allowed to give the answers, or they have to guess your audience?
Oh, no. We'll give the answers here.
Okay. Well, the first one, the down, the heavy, is Vincent Van Gogh.
Ah, that makes sense.
He committed suicide, I think, at age 38. The upbeat one, hi, how are you? Is somebody who lived till well into their 90s, very happy. That's Pablo Picasso. And just as a sideline, you can actually change your handwriting and change things about your personality. If you were the Vincent Van Gogh and your handwriting's down and you're always looking at things like, oh, what was me? You can change your handwriting, push it uphill, and it'll actually change chemicals in your brain, and you will become a happier person.
I was wondering about that because of the CBT angle. That sort of makes sense. I hate to say fake it till you make it, but right. it sort of is, right? Instead of your inside projecting out, you're saying you can force the outside to project in. And I actually do believe in some of that. Like if you force yourself to smile all the time, eventually it becomes a Duchamp smile.
Right.
If you try.
Easiest ways to be happy is with a chopstick. Why? Put it in your mouth and makes your lips go up, and you will smile. Your body and your brain are connected. We're
Mhm.
not a brain and we're not a body. We're both. And so the more you can get them to work together, the the better chances you have of achieving what you want. So if, example, you stand up tall and walk and you project pride, you will become a more happy, successful person. If you slump over, I mean, it's easy with body language, slump
Mhm.
over, you will tell your brain, oh, I'm sad. So with handwriting, same thing. It's a body movement. You write uphill, you're forcing yourself up.
Mhm.
So you're doing a physical motion to help with a mental, it doesn't help if you don't know why you're doing it. But if
Right.
you go, okay, I want to be more positive. I'm going to look at life in a positive direction. And every time I write, I'm going to push my hand uphill. You're telling your brain, oh, wait, I think you're happier. And if you study successful people, there's one thing in common with every single one of them. Their
Hmm.
handwriting goes uphill. Because you have to have energy. You have to have energy to be successful.
Well, that makes sense. And I'm thinking too that you're climbing. So
You
a successful person's always striving. It's
oh,
not even necessarily, happy all the time, but they're always forward. They're always climbing. They're never down.
you're right. You're right. They may be down inside, but they're pushing forward.
Which, yeah,
So,
definitely motivational. So we'll jump to number 3.
okay.
Which of these two politicians doesn't want you to be able to read him, A or B? Now, this one's, I'd say, a little bit harder because it just doesn't necessarily say everything. But A is kind of a Sharpie looking signature. Has the extra dots. I know that has some meaning to you, like there's a problem. And then the second one is more scripted looking. It's one of those T's that, or J's that looks like a T type of style. I would say that A is hiding and B is, pretty open because the signature's open and the way you.
You got it. You got it. And this book, the original book was written, oh gosh, maybe 10 years ago, and it's been
Mhm.
updated through since then. So these are certain people who were in the news 10 years ago. But you're right. I'm not going to tell you who these people are. I'll let the audience guess them. But you're right that the second one is like, here I am. I'll give you a hint. The second one is Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, I guess that.
And the first one you'll have to read about.
Okay. And that the dot that has significance when people
It's like
have.
secret code. It's like I said, Morse code.
Mhm.
Does this person know they're doing this and not letting anyone see their signature? No. But subconsciously, their signature, like their personality, is like Morse code. It's secret code. So you know that this person is secretive and
Mhm.
has sort of a secret life.
Okay, and interesting the and the dots do some of it. There's something called leakage
Okay.
that is talked about in body language circles and all that. Is that sort of what you're talking about here? Is that they're sort of leaking? They're not consistent in what they're doing, so they're leaking.
Well, not exactly what I thought you meant, and I maybe didn't know what you meant, but leaking I call is you're leaking your personality.
Right.
You can't help it.
Yes.
It's there. Like I said, Morse code a little bit. Does this person go, oh, I'm gonna make my signature like Morse code? No.
Right.
But deep down, they're secretive and we are reading their brain. And that's why we can't read that signature and it looks like a code. We're going to see somebody a little later on whose handwriting is all Morse code.
Okay. Very cool. Okay, and then which of these? We'll go with question 4. Sorry, which one of these
Oh,
writers is more nurturing, A or
okay.
B? This one looks obvious to me, but A is more nurturing,
Right.
and the reason is that A has kind of the bubblier, just rounded writing.
Right.
I figure that round is soft, angles are less soft.
For sure. When you're angry, if you're angry like this, try to make a curve. You can't.
True.
Anger tightens your whole system up. So this first round, think of a mother, rounded, curvy. The first handwriting as Mother Teresa.
Mm.
And the second handwriting, I think, I haven't looked at it for a while, but I know I think it's Heimlich Himmler. Yeah. So when you look at a lot of angles, there's no softness there, no cuddling. When you look at a lot of roundness, when you look at young girls, it's all this rounded handwriting. It's sort of a
Sure.
softness. Eventually, you want a combination. You want to be a little tough, but not so tough that you have no empathy. And you don't want to get stepped on all the time, so not all rounded. So, but you instinctually, again, you knew rounded. You don't know why. Like, if I were to ask you, why did round? You go, I don't know. It just feels that way. But there's a reason when you're round or soft. I tell people, if you're upset, take your hand and make round circles, and you will calm your body down.
Sounds like flow.
Yeah,
So,
flow. Get in
well,
the flow.
Tai Chi kind of does
Yeah,
movements of that sort, right?
right. It's the body movement to go with what you want your body and brain to do.
Okay. Well, now question 5. Which of these
Can I
writers? Yes,
let me tell you one last thing about the last sample. In Germany, they used to have this very angular handwriting right around before the Second World War. Tough, angular. They actually changed their system of writing to make it softer. So they took it very seriously that they were producing too much of an angular, angry people. And they softened up their handwriting to soften up the people.
That's interesting. That makes sense. It makes sense why they were angry, too. It makes sense why they were angular. I mean, Germany was not in good shape after World War I.
No.
And if you think about it, and I'm not, rewarding, I'm just saying, think of how powerful that country became in a short period of time after being completely laid out. I mean, they had to pay for everything in World War I. So there definitely was a hard-bitten edge and rage society-wise.
And you can see it in the writing.
Wow. That is a fascinating tidbit. All right. So question 5 is, which of these writers holds back when it comes to expressing emotions?
Okay.
A or B?
Okay.
I'm going to go. Is every answer A? Anyway, sorry.
I always say.
Anyway, it looks like A to me because it's just a little bit more. I'm not going to say sloppy. It's readable, but it just feels looser when I look at it, like more relaxed. The second one is kind of going back to the first signature. Oh no, the first one was B. So okay, it was BAAA. Anyway,
holds
the
back.
First one is constrained, and I'm curious about the leftward angle too. Is that a handedness or is that also a tell?
People think, I have a left slanted handwriting. That means this person's left-handed. Statistically, as many right-handed people write with a backward slant as left-handed people. We obviously have more right-handed people. Think about, again, body language. If I'm reaching towards you, I'm going to come towards you there. When I reach towards you, I'm reaching towards other people. When I pull back, what am I doing? I'm withdrawing.
Okay.
So handwriting that will go backward slant, that can be friendly, but emotionally they're going to withdraw.
So shy even.
Well, it's even more than shy. You can be shy, or you could be not shy. Like let's say you were in a relationship with number 2 and they had that backward slant. You don't know what they're thinking. They could talk to you. They could say, how's today? Fine. You don't know. I knew somebody and he said, my wife, I never fought with my wife. I'm like, oh, that's nice. We never fought a day. I said, oh, how wonderful. He goes, yeah, well, we're divorced. I said, why if you never fought? He said, well, it turns out she was in love with someone else. One day she took all the stuff and left. And I never knew, but we never fought. And he said, well, I looked at her handwriting with all this backward slant. So maybe she was friendly. She talked. He knew nothing what was going on. It wasn't like, a normal relationship. You yell at each other. But with someone who withdraws, doesn't tell you anything. You don't really know what's going on inside of them.
I'd be curious if her handwriting changed afterward.
That would be interesting. Like, when she got in a different relationship, did she change?
Her feel
Probably.
open, things like that.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, I do believe when you're in a better situation, you can change. However, you're at a certain point, you're you. You may
Sure.
be happier or you sadder or you scared, but you're basically you.
Right. No, that makes sense. And yeah, most of the time, if you fall for somebody who's cheating on somebody else, then there's your template for the future.
Right.
Usually. All right. Next one's very interesting.
Fantasy. Oh, okay.
Question 6. Which of these writers is a transvestite?
Right.
I am going to go with B.
Why?
Because of the I don't know how to put it. I don't know if I say colorful, or there's again, it's like a flair, like a design, like they appear in my mind, because I have this knowledge that they are decorating their writing more than left, which just seems like a straightforward handwriting.
Do you know that I'm going to hire you? You are wonderful at this. You're wonderful. You're right. Except there is something else in B. If you look really closely, look at things hanging.
The phallics.
Yeah, there's phallic symbols all over. When you have people who are a little bit different sexually, they will put phallic symbols in their handwriting, or
it's on the brain all the time.
Can I tell you another story about phallic symbols? And I'm going to make up a name. I have a friend, let's call her Susie. Susie's always was asking me, look at my handwriting. She would ask me every day. I'm thinking, you're not going to change that much from Monday to Wednesday. Why do you want me to look at your handwriting again? Well, one time she goes, look at my handwriting, and I said, well, why do you? And all of a sudden she had phallic symbols in her handwriting. And I looked at her and I said, why do you have phallic symbols? I've never seen this before. And she goes, oh, my high school boyfriend came into town and I'm having an affair. I'm like, oh, well, anyhow, he left town. The phallic symbols went away. Well, while she was having that affair, it was all over her handwriting.
I hate to say this, but using your theory, then every 15-year-old boy to say age 20-something is going to be full of phallic symbols.
Possible.
Because there's not much other thought.
I've never been a 15-year-old boy, but I'm going to take your word for it.
All right, let me see. I'm trying to find the next question. I got a computer bouncing around. Oh, that was it.
That was the quiz.
Oh my. Okay. Speaking of angles, we can run forward a little bit. You've angles and phallic symbols and a president. There's another example you gave. Do you want to discuss that? Because you wrote an extra chapter and it's been covered too.
I wrote another chapter on Donald Trump. He's an interesting character. And I've given a lot of talks on him, his handwriting. And I just, why don't you do this? Just make a bunch of angles with your hand. Go like this.
Sure.
And tell me how you feel. Really tough. Okay.
Yeah, marching.
Yeah. All right. And again, do your curves. And just feel it.
Sure.
Do you feel differently?
Oh, yeah.
This is tough. When you do angles, it's aggressive. Everybody's seen Donald Trump's signature. He shows it off all over the place. It's a bunch of angles. And when you see angles, it's tough, it's hostile, it's aggressive, it's competitive. There's not a softness in there. That is not what the person is trying to portray.
No, it'd be a weakness to him.
Yeah. I've actually given a lot of talks on this, and I've done it both to very conservative groups and very liberal groups. And I come out and they go, I loved what you said about Donald Trump. And I'll go, huh? And I'll say exactly the same thing to both groups. And I'll go, well, what did you mean? And the more liberal group will go, yeah, those angles. He's angry. He's tough. Is he mean and bad? I say it to a conservative group. They go, yeah, those angles. He's tough. He's fighting for America. I was like, oh, and I say exactly the same words, and it's interpreted 100% different depending on who's listening to what I say.
Well, that gets back to what I was saying earlier, right? I'm a big believer in confirmation bias. So
okay.
That's literally what you have. You have one side who thinks he's a monster. So absolutely, he's got angles. He's just a monster, like sharp teeth, and he's going to kill everybody. And you have the other side who's saying, he's not a wimp. He's tough. He's like a spear, and he's leading us forward.
Well, right. Well, it's, but nobody disagrees with that's the personality.
Sure.
It's just what you, in your own head, think makes, I don't want to call it a good or everything. I mean, nobody disagrees. Nobody says, well, wait, no, he's a soft person. Nobody disagrees. It's that, but that same quality, some people find it admirable and other people find it not admirable. Of course, we all are a little biased. You like the person, you kind of turn it into what you think is good. You don't like the person, you turn it into what you think is not good. But nobody disagrees that that's the personality.
Okay. And how about on that note, because we were just talking about his signatures, and you had mentioned how his signature was a little bit phallic at one point, and now it's just all angles. And that lines up with world events.
Right. If you trace Donald Trump's signature back through the years, there's something called a phallic symbol, and it looks exactly like what it is. Mm-hmm. And when it's in his handwriting, it's almost a guarantee that those are the times he's fooling around. And then since he's been president, it's completely disappeared. That phallic symbol is no longer at all in his handwriting. So, I mean, his priorities are no longer sex. Mm-hmm. If you trace back, you could probably do a timeline when he was getting himself in trouble by when the phallic symbol was in his handwriting and when it would disappear, when it was in his handwriting and when it would disappear.
I could totally see it. And I can see the all angles too. And it was also compressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Not as spread. It was tighter.
Right. Tight.
Like somebody who's under extreme pressure, quite
That's
possibly.
True. And let me just explain one other thing. Your signature is different than the rest of your handwriting.
I wanted to go into that.
Oh, okay. Your signature, why do you write a signature? You only write a signature for other people. I never write, I, Michelle Dresbold, need to go to the store and buy a tomato. Mm-hmm. I sign my name to give to you. My check, end of a document. I'm showing you who I am. Your signature is how you want other people to see you. The rest of your writing is how you feel inside your head. So if your signature is basically the same as the rest of your writing, who I show to myself is who I'm showing to you. If your signature is very different than your writing, what's going on in your head can be very different than how you want to appear to other people.
And thus we have, and we'll finish out with this example. You have a note that he gave to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh, right.
And the writing in this, well, there's a few things. Like one, the boy believes in an upward angle, like crazy. Right. So that is a definite forward thinking. Anybody who's seen Donald Trump thinks of him as somewhat optimistic and confident. The writing itself, though, looks nowhere near as violent as the signature, except on the best wishes, which I find interesting. That B almost has some sharp angles there. I don't know. And maybe, you see, I'm projecting quite possibly, but I
do
see that.
do you think he's really giving him best wishes?
That's what I'm projecting, is that
Yeah,
it's almost like the old fashioned movies. They would say, "Good day to you, sir. Good day." And it was like, it was really saying F off.
it's exactly like that. It's exactly like that. Sometimes you can read a word. Let's say somebody goes, "Oh, I love you so much." And they make the word love real little. They don't love
Mm,
you. He's saying best wishes. He makes it real rough. And he's not
right.
really giving him the best wishes. So
Yeah, I was
you
trying
can,
to find another B in there, and I can't. Unfortunately, he doesn't have one because that would sustain it even. Oh, no, badly. Yeah, he wrote badly with a B that's much more rounded and normal looking.
right,
So,
he likes badly, but he doesn't like best wishes. There it is. That best wishes is tough. Like, yeah, I'm giving you best wishes, please.
well, this is fascinating. I could go on with this all day, and I definitely want to have you back.
I
And
would
I'm
love to be back. One day we're
trying to,
going to get your handwriting.
which version? I can write 20 ways. I'll be sitting there going, Michelle's looking at right upward. Oh, wait,
Right.
that's sharp.
So,
Rounded angles. It's going to look like a 3-year-old learning cursive saying, "This is for Michelle," because I am not going to get caught up with my own weird psychology. Um, you are part of a new group, and I know I've heard the name, the Secret Task Force.
well, actually, we've changed that name.
Oh,
At least as of right now, I think we're calling it Profiler Task Force.
oh, I like that better actually,
Yes,
because
I
you're
think
actually designing what you're doing with versus.
because we're telling about people's secrets, but we're not really secret. So we're a group of profilers, a
Okay,
force of profilers. So
okay,
that's
that's
how,
perfect.
yeah.
And I am updating my note right now
Okay.
because I am very excited about this. I have worked with and had the behavior panel
Okay.
on, and I know all of those guys, and you're very similar in pattern of 4 different. In their case, they're angled a little more to body language, but they are not only body language, especially when you throw Chase in the mix. And Greg Hartley is obviously a big time interrogator.
Right.
So I love the aspect of you guys getting together, and I'm trying to work it out so I can get you all on as well,
Great. Great.
because I love exploring the different um, disciplines, if you will, or arts. I don't know what you would
Right.
call this,
Or
but
both arts and disciplines, I suppose. Yeah,
and that
it should be really fun because it's 4 of us and um, we're very excited and we're all 4 very different personalities, but
mhm.
I think it will be a good combination.
I absolutely, especially if you're looking at different angles. Now it's you who, your main specialties, handwriting analysis, but you
Right.
also do body language. So I
Right.
don't want it to, undersell
We all,
other
we all
talents.
do like a specialty and then, yeah, no, we know enough about the other things.
Right. And I would say that Lena is into statement analysis as
Right.
her primary. Again, she also does interrogation, which is another specialty. So they're almost equal, but they go hand in hand. Susan is a strange machine who learns pretty much every discipline out there, but I'd say she's most famous for face reading.
Right.
And Janine, again, I feel is a mixed combination of statement analysis, body language, and I throw humor with her.
Yeah. Yeah, she's
So,
fun.
well,
I only met Janine is the only person I met in person.
okay. Well, Janine reminds me a little of Mark Bowden in
Okay.
the sense that now Mark is a brilliant language reader, but he really focuses more on teaching people how to project.
Okay.
So what I love is his additives of like when you're delivering a speech, how do you do it? And I kind of feel like Janine has a lot of that in there too, that she can teach people how to present themselves.
Yeah,
So you
she's
guys,
wonderful. She's wonderful.
yeah, you guys have a outstanding combo, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, yay. Yay. Thank you. We're looking forward to it too. This will be very exciting.
Okay, and I think that you start September 1st.
Um,
Like
we don't know.
sometime
We
in September.
yet. Yes, I guess we do.
But In the meantime, folks, you have a book to read. The book is Sex, Lies, and Handwriting. And there are two versions of it. I have the original version and I also have the new version on Kindle. I recommend everybody please check us out.
I recommend it also. Thank you.
Michelle, thank you so much for coming on.
So nice meeting you.